If you're building a guitar from scratch or a kit, you want to stick around. The guitar is now finished, and now it's time to give it a full setup and hear how it plays. I do this going step by step with tools and methods any experienced guitar player should really have and know how to use. So stay with me. Let's fine-tune a guitar. Hi, I'm Yoav and this is the Electric Luthier. Today I'll be setting up the guitar to make it play correctly and comfortably. There are different methods to get this done, and the overall goal is to make the action as low as you like for comfortable playing while avoiding any buzzing or dead tones. As some of the adjustments are independent of each other, you can also accomplish this in slightly different order. But they all boil down to 4 parts: adjusting the relief via the truss rod, setting the nut height, correcting the radius and height of the bridge or saddles, and tuning the intonation also at the bridge side. I'll start with the relief. The relief is the amount of up bow the neck has. Some players like a perfectly flat neck, but in most cases you will want a bit of bow to leave room for the vibration of the string, which is significantly bigger around the middle of the string, at the 12th fret. At least there's a consensus that the back bow should always be eliminated. You can check the relief in 2 simple methods. The first is using a notch straight edge. Although if you've already leveled the frets, a normal straight edge will also do. We put the straight edge on the neck and see if there's a gap in the middle, in the sides, or not at all. You want to do this under tension, meaning with strings on, as they will add to the relief. After making sure there's no back bow, we can start tuning the amount of relief. The second and very simple way to measure the relief is simply by putting a capo at the 1st fret and pressing on the last one. Then we look at the gap created at the 8th or 9th fret. If there's no gap at all, then the neck is either flat or at a back bow. In most cases, once you string the guitar, you'll get a slight up bow and there will be a small gap there. Notice that this way of checking the neck is totally independent of the nut or the bridge. Now we get to the adjustment. That is done via the truss rod. If you didn't install it upside down, the old righty-tighty lefty-loosey rule should work. In other words, turning the truss rod key clockwise will tighten the truss rod and eliminate the up bow. A counterclockwise turn will lift it to exaggerate the bow. The truss rod may be loose and neutral to begin with, but after getting it to tension, the adjustment itself is very minimal, and a 1/4 of a turn may go a long way. After each little turn, I go back and check with a capo on the 1st and a finger on the last fret. Now, Fender recommends about 0.01 inches as a good starting point, and you can check it with a designated ruler like the one I'm using. You can also use filler gauges if you want to be more precise or if you're trying to match a specific preference. You may go back and forth and turn the truss rod a bit more or even dial it back a little until you're happy. As a side note, if you were looking forward to my leveling and crowning video, it's sadly gone due to a memory card malfunction, but I did go through with it. Otherwise, this setup is useless. Now part 1 is done. I move on to the nut. I have this black tusk nut and I want to try and avoid filing the slots. Therefore, I'll file the bottom of the nut to lower the whole nut to the desired height. I loosen the strings and then use my flattened pencil to mark the height of the frets, which will help estimate how much material I need to remove from the bottom of the nut. I give the slot itself another little filing just to smooth it out and not really to deepen it. I then proceed to file the nut. Again, I'll have a bit of back and forth. You really don't want to overdo this. Here too there are a few methods to get the right height. The simplest one is just to press on the 3rd fret and then check the height over the 1st fret. You can tap it with a finger to feel the distance until you have contact. You want something between a paper thin and a business card to fit right in there. You can either estimate it or compare it in feel to your favorite guitar. You can also get more precise and check it with filler gauges. If you want absolute precision, Stumac has a contraption with a ruler and filler gauges which will get you there. I demonstrated something similar in idea in my Dragon Telly build, and I'll link it above and below. I'm using the tapping method and just working by feel of it. I think the nut can be even slightly lower, but I'll leave it at this point. The lowest it can be is equivalent to a 0 fret. If you're interested in more guitar building content, please take a moment and subscribe, and maybe even hit the little bell to get notified when my next video comes out. I encourage you to comment or ask about anything in the comments below, and I also welcome you to visit my website, theelectricluthier.com, with dozens of articles on guitar building. The bridge is our last stop for the next 2 adjustments. The height and radius of the bridge comes first. Now, regardless of the action height, we want the strings to leave the bridge at the same radius as the fretboard itself. So all 6 strings will have the same distance from the frets on every fret. For that, we can use any type of radius gauge with the same radius we used for the fretboard. The preferred type though is the T-type, which can be inserted under the strings. I adjust the string height on every string separately and check that they are just touching and buzzing on the radius gauge. This adjustment is limited on bridges such as the Gibson Tune-O-Matic, which has a built-in radius and only 2 height adjustments for the whole bridge. The correct radius is determined from the bottom of the strings. So take into account that if you're using a gauge from the top side, the thicker strings will seem higher, although the action may be the same as the thin ones. At this point, you can start lowering all the saddles uniformly until you reach the desired action or start buzzing. Now, if the buzz is uniform, you may have just gone too low, but if it's just a few frets or strings, you may want to check your fret leveling again. Now that the action is set across the nut, neck and bridge, and assuming the guitar is tuned, there's one more little issue: the intonation. To make sure each string is in tune, not just with the open string, but along the whole neck, we may need to slightly adjust the length of each string individually. To check the intonation, you play each string open or the 12th fret overtone, and then at the 12th fret, which is an octave higher. Whether it is an octave higher if you were using an open string, it's still supposed to be the same note. If the 12th fret is relatively sharp, we need to slightly lengthen the string. If it's flat, we will want to shorten it. Remember that when we positioned the bridge, we measured the scale length, which is 25.5 inches in this case, and set the saddles to be around the midway point, so we have room for such adjustments. You can check by ear or use any type of tuner you like. if the 12th fret is sharp and you want to lengthen the string and move the saddles farther from the nut, you should also loosen the strings a bit so you don't overstretch them. If it was flat and you're shortening the strings, that part doesn't matter. Now, depending on how flat or sharp your 12th fret sounds, usually minor adjustments are needed, so go easy on the adjustment screw. After each few turns, you should bring the string back to tune and test it again. Once the intonation is correct, you'll just need to repeat the process for the rest of the strings. Now, a typical outcome would have the high E string be the shortest and the low E string the longest. Notice that tunematic bridges are usually installed in a slight angle to begin with. This is the reason, the intonation. The slight angle, which will have about an 1/18 of an inch difference between the top and the bottom, will just bring you to a better starting point for setting up the intonation. Depending on your precision and experience, you may want to go back and tweak any of the stages we've already gone through to your liking. Guitar techs do it all the time, and especially after every major treatment of frets, and even if you've changed your string size. Now that we're all set up, it's time to give it a go and see how it sounds and feels. I've enlisted my nephew Buxi to give us a bit of a demo. Shout out to Buxi, you may want to check him out, he does lots more than playing a guitar. I was not aiming for studio quality recording, and we had no bells and whistles or any other effects other than the old Marshall overdrive. Having said that, you can distinctly hear the difference between the neck and the bridge pickup and the different levels of tone. This concludes this build. I hope you've enjoyed the process and the outcome. If you did, and if you want to know when more videos on the subjects are coming, hit the subscribe button and don't forget the little bell to get notified. I also welcome you to come and visit my website, theelectricluthier.com, with much more information on guitar building. Until then, go build a guitar.